Hello and welcome to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream live here on this beautiful Friday morning for the next couple of hours. We're going to continue where we left off on Tuesday, doing an introduction to Adobe Muse CC. So we did quite a bit on the setup on Tuesday, but we hadn't really got into putting a lot of content on the pages. We got the master pages set up, we got them all nice and responsive, we got the menus created, and everything else kind of like the ground floor of the site ready to go. The site we're making up as we go along, by the way. And now it's time to continue that process and show you some more things about getting started with Adobe Muse. Now, before I do that, there are going to be people that are going to watch this later as a video on demand here on the Twitch channel, or people that are going to watch it maybe on my YouTube channel when I get around to uploading my last few episodes, which I have yet to do. But anyway, whether you're watching this as a video on demand on Twitch or a replay on my YouTube channel, note that this was a live show that happens every Tuesday and Friday from 10 a.m. till 12 noon Eastern. That's when I do mine. And therefore, because it is live, you will see me look over just slightly to my left here, and I will address comments and questions and just give shout outs here in the chat. So if you're like, hey, how do I participate in this? How do I chat and ask questions during the stream? Then join us live at twitch.tv/Adobe, 7 days a week, about 17 to 18 hours a day, starting at 7 a.m. Pacific time till midnight Pacific time. Every day, 7 days a week. There's always someone streaming. So there are Adobe evangelists streaming here, there are artists, there are designers, there are photographers, there's video people, audio people, effects people, XD people, all kinds of people streaming every day, all day long here on Twitch. So if you are watching the video on demand or you're new to the Twitch channel, I encourage you to follow this channel so that you will be notified when it does go live, which is all the time. And you can also kind of keep up on the schedule and know who's coming, when, and what's going to be going on. So that's kind of my recap for the people that will be watching this later. We're going to kick things off in just a minute. We're going to jump over to Muse, go right back to our topic. And the site that we were in before was the Muse intro site that I saved from last time. So we'll jump right back over to that. And now that we're here, this is kind of where we left things on Tuesday. So for example, we had left off creating this master page. We put some color rectangles in, we put a logo in, we put a menu in. We put some social media icons down. We made this all responsive, putting in breakpoints where the menu was breaking. So we did all this work to get things done for the Tuesday intro stream, for the Tuesday first part of this. Now, if I go in and here, let's actually go back to the home page here. If I preview this page in the browser, it'll generate that HTML. It'll show me the page. And again, we haven't put any content on it, but just to remind you of the responsive breakpoints or breakpoints we put in to make this a fluid design. Everything kind of stays centered as we told it to do. And then when the design gets to a point to where it won't accommodate that regular menu anymore, then what we did is we had it switch over to the more, nicknamed hamburger style menu or mobile menu, which is really just an accordion panel that will get us to the spots that we needed to get to, where the screen is actually going to be smaller and you didn't have room for the full size menu. All right, so that was what we had done so far. So now let's go ahead and jump in and start adding content to these pages and start talking about that. So first and foremost, again, most of the work we did, or all the work we did, was done on the master page. These were the things that we wanted to be on every page. Now that we've done that, we can, you can leave the master page open or close it. But when we get to a particular page where you want content, Now you're building the content for this page. I also want to remind you that, let me go back to the master one more time, that the breakpoints that we put in, so we put one, there was the main one here for 960, we put one in for 523, we put another one in for 420. These breakpoints were for the master. So they are not, they're represented on the regular pages in the site, but they're not breakpoints on the regular pages of the site. So let me show you what I mean. When I go to the home page, these little triangles pointing down, these are the breakpoints from the master. Now, the reason that putting them on the master doesn't put them on every page, it shows you where they are, but you would have to still add them to this page, is because these breakpoints were designed for this content that's on the master. They're not designed for the content you're going to actually put on the page. So that's why every page from here on out may have the same breakpoints or different based on the content of that page. So first and foremost, when you're designing your pages, a lot of people like to think mobile first and design out from everything else. I certainly can understand that, because it's a lot easier designing for your smallest room in your house, or adding things to your smallest room, or living in a one-bedroom studio apartment and then moving to a bigger place and then spreading out, than it is trying to take hundreds of items in a small room and then make them fit into in a large room and make them fit into a smaller room. So a lot of people design this way first. They'll design mobile first and then expand out. I did not really, I don't really like doing it that way. I don't know why. For me, it's a lot easier to design out this way and make it smaller if I have to, than to try and design small and then design out. It's totally up to you, but at the end of the day, it's really about designing or making sure that it all fits all the way down to your smallest screen that you expect people to be looking at on your site. So at this point, let's talk about placing graphics, text, and widgets on your page. So let's start with graphics. Placing graphics can be done a couple of different ways. You can just drag and drop. You can go up to your file menu and choose place. You can bring things in from a CC library. You can bring in items just about any other way that you would bring them into like an Adobe InDesign page. The only difference is how that graphic will be handled. Good morning, Echo Seth, and no, you're not too late, Adventive. But anyway, the graphics you bring in, the only thing you have to think about is how will they be handled at all the various sizes. So for example, let's say I go to my CC libraries, which I've got some libraries here for logos or icons. I've got one here for a website that we kind of worked on before, the Pigeon website, which doesn't have a lot in it. Let's see, I thought I had another library. Here, let's scroll down. Here we go. So I had one for Ike's Bikes that we worked on before. I've got this Altura one. This Altura one's got some cool stuff in it. So let me grab this one. So I've got photos, I've got logos, I've got all kinds of things in it. So let's drag in, for example, this picture of New York City. When I drag this in, I get a place icon, and the place icon is going to let me place this any size I want. If I click, it's going to place it at 100%, or if I drag, it'll let me drag it out. The only problem with dragging, which it will let me do, is that if you notice that I'm getting that percentage there, so it's saying it's 58% of the original size. If I drag it out too far, like 109%, now I'm upsampling that photo. So just be careful that if you're going to use a photo, try not to go over 100% of that size unless it's a vector or SVG object. Then you can scale up as much as you want. So at this point, 100% is too big anyway, so I can go down and I can say, you know what, fit this in right here. And this is actually an Adobe stock preview, so this one hasn't been licensed anyway. Now, as I showed you on Tuesday, every image you bring in is going to automatically default to responsive width and height. You can turn that off and it will stay a fixed size, but I guess the Muse team assumes that when you place a graphic, it should be responsive. It should scale down as the page scales down. Now, where I agree with that is on the content pages. I absolutely agree, because yeah, I do want that image to scale down. Where I disagree with that being the default is when I was trying to do all this work on the master page, all these little icons, I didn't want those to resize. So if you're going to pick a default, yeah, I guess you got to pick one or the other. But I wish it were more like a sticky design or sticky default, where it will stay none until I change it to responsive, then it'll stay responsive until I change it back to none. That would be the fastest way for me to work. So I'm going to propose that to the Muse team for a future update. But anyway, we got this graphic in. We've told the graphic to resize to the browser. And so now, even if I just drag this down, by the way, wait. One thing we didn't do yet. We didn't tell it, even though it's responsive width and height, we didn't tell it what to align to. In other words, is it aligning to the left side? Is it going to stay centered? Aligning to the right? Whatever. So I'm going to say that it responsively stays in the center. Now, when I scale this page down, I don't have to worry about the stuff on the master page, because it will take care of itself. And that image will just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, all the way down to the smallest size that we set as the minimum page size. So, or minimum page size that we told it. So that image is taking care of itself. I don't have to worry about it. Now that's one way to do it, is just simply place the graphic. And yes, I kept it in the bounds of the guides, but I don't have to. I can certainly go to the edge here, and I can go to the edge here and do the exact same thing, and it will just scale it down, but keep it on the edge. Now, the difference is, and this is something you're going to have to decide. When you place the graphic that way, you're telling it, well, wait, let me make sure here. Let me check one thing before I say this. Yeah. Let me check one little thing here. Yep. Okay, so if I preview this page in the browser, we get an image that is the width of that page. And that's exactly what we asked for. But sometimes you may want an image that's just like these red rectangles or whatever color they are. You may want one that's the width of the browser window. And that's a lot. You see that a lot in web design now. You see a lot of what are called hero images, the images that are as big as the browser window, or at least the width. And the way we did it was we just drug it to the edge of the page and said, okay, be responsive to the edge of the page. And when the page gets smaller, automatically drop down. I don't know why it's doing that, but automatically drop down in size. So what if I want the other? What if I want it to be the full width of the browser window? Well, there's a way to do it, but there's a caveat to it. This way, even though it's not set to the width of the browser, it is maintaining its proportion and we see the entire image. Now, if I go up to this, this toggle for either none or responsive width and height, there's this option called stretch to browser width. And that's what we did to the rectangles. But that does not work on a, you're studying in a diploma in graphic design and slowly making your way through my videos. Cool. That does not apply to an individual graphic that you place. So how do you get that? How do I get an image to respond to the entire width of the browser window? Well, you can do it. You just have to do it a different way. So I'm going to delete this. first and foremost. And then I'm going to go in and drag out just a rectangle. Because remember with the rectangle, even if I just drag out one like that, we can tell the rectangle to stretch to the browser width. And boom, it just automatically went to the edges of the browser. Now, the difference is you can, I don't know that I can do it this way. Let me try this first. I know one way I can do it. I'm just trying to see if I can do it a different way. Let's see if I can do this. Drag it in. I don't know that I can fill it this way. I'm going to try. X, cut it out. No, there isn't a way to do that, unfortunately. Okay, what I was going to show you was see if it had a paste into. It does not. And so let's see if I can do it this way. I can't do it this way from the library. Let me try, but I don't think so. Yeah, because it's going to make me find the graphic. Okay, so what we got to do is we got to go and put the graphic. This particular way that I'm going to show you doesn't work with libraries. So we got to get the graphic onto the hard drive first. Then we can go in and tell it to fill the frame that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Photoshop. And once I'm in Photoshop, we're going to then I'm going to bring that library item in, save it to the hard drive, and then we can place it. All right, so let's wait for our libraries to pop up here. And I'm going to switch to that same Altura library that we were in a minute ago. And now that I've got the Altura library up, we were looking at that scene of New York City. There it is. And I'll just open this up. And I'm just, even though I haven't licensed it yet, I'm just going to save it out as a JPEG. Unlicensed for now because we're just playing around. And we'll save it out to the desktop. And I'm not worrying about size or anything like that because Muse will handle that. And now that I've saved it out to the hard drive, by creating this rectangle and setting the rectangle to stretch to the browser width, now what I can do is go to the fill for that rectangle, click on the fill, and this is something else I should point out before we actually grab the image. Whenever you see the tools up here on the control panel, you'll notice that this one has a hyper or a link under it, and this one has a drop down, and it's all fill. And you're thinking, well, that's all the same thing, right? It's not. Just like stroke, and it has a drop down, effects, and it has a pop out, and hyperlinks kind of works the same way. There's a hyperlink button, and it has a drop down. Whenever you see a link and a drop down, those are two different things. So let me explain the difference. If I were to just choose the drop down, I would never know that there are more options. I would just think, oh, well, I could fill it with a color. But if I click the actual word fill, then what that will do is give me the ability to go in. Damage? Hello, what do you mean? What's up with my PC today? Everything's working fine, except I was having a little slowdown just in Lightroom. But anyway, I've got everything else going here, and when I click the link, I get all the other options. So I get the ability to fill this with a solid color, fill it with a gradient, change the opacity, change the color, which will be the same colors I get from that pop-up, and more importantly, the ability to add an image. So if I can add an image, then that gives me the ability to go out to the hard drive, go grab that New York City scene that we just saved out, and then I can go ahead and place it. Now, because I placed it, I can also say either fit it with its original size or scale to fit or scale to fill. So these are all the options you'd be missing out on if you just click the down arrow. You wouldn't know the rest of these options are there. So I'm going to say scale to fill, and now it's scaling that to fill this up. I can also say keep it centered, or center at the top, center at the bottom, left, right, so forth and so on. So now, because this rectangle is responsive width and height, because this image inside, which is a low-res preview, by the way, is set to fill. Now if I look at this page, I'll get a totally different experience. Preview this page in the browser. I'll get the ability to have that image be the full width. Now remember I said there was a caveat? Here's the caveat. Because you're not automatically adjusting the height of the rectangle, depending on how wide the person's browser page is, part of your image is going to be cropped off. So since I told it to center it, the top's being cropped off and the bottom's being cropped off. Had I told it to align at the bottom, we'd always see the bottom, but the top would be cropped off. Had I told it to align at the top, we'd always see the top, but the bottom might be cropped off. So let me align it to the top because I think the top of this might look the best. So if I go to fill and say align to the top and keep it centered, and now we preview this page in the browser, then I should still see the tops even though the bottoms are being cropped off. And see, that's kind of the catch-22. I can make the rectangle taller, absolutely, but you also have to keep in mind that depends on the width of the browser. If I make the browser smaller, we see more of the city. Once I get to a certain size, it's being cropped off again because now it's being cropped off left and right of the city. So this is an effect that's typically used for background images where you don't have to see all of the background image to get the idea. If I needed to see more of it at bigger sizes, then I need to drop the rectangle height down as well. So I would need to do more like this. Now if I preview this, I've given the height some more room to work with. Actually, I can go up a little as well. Preview page in browser. And then I'm going to get more of it. So that's looking better. And again, if they go down in size, I'll see more of it. You go down too much, then I'm going to crop. So those are your choices. Now, if you need to see at all times the full width and height, and you want it to fill the page, then that's a totally different thing. What you're going to do at that point is you're going to set this, well here, I haven't tried this in this image, let's try it. Instead of setting it scale to fill, we can say scale to fit, and then what that will do is, no matter what, always scale it to fit. Now, in that case, we're going to end up with white space either on the sides or top and bottom. So for example, preview page in browser. See, same thing. Because I told it to always show me the actual image, we're back to the way we were as if we had not used that rectangle that's going all the way out to the edge. So that's why I said scale to fill, because most people want it to fill the entire width of the browser. Does this mean we can't use images in our CC library as image fill since we can't drag into a bounding box? That's what it means right now. So you'd have to save out those images in the library to your hard drive just as I did to be able to use them this way. And that sounds more like a limitation of, even though Muse implemented libraries, they hadn't implemented it into that one feature. So in this case, I go back and I would choose scale to fill, and that way it will fill it, but you have to pick and choose what's more important to you. If you need to see the entire image and you don't care about the width and height, then just scale it to fit. If you don't care about seeing the top and bottom of the image at all times, which I kind of liked it more like this, then you can scale to fill, and it will give you that full width browser look that people are using mostly on their sites these days. And again, it just depends on the image itself, what's going to look good. And keep in mind, this is just a low-res preview, so that's why it kind of looks really pixelated. So it really depends on, is this just a background image or an important part of the site? If it's an important part of the site where we need to see the entire image left to right, then we wouldn't do it this way. We'd just place the image. But if you want to have it filled this way and have an image kind of make up the background of your site, then this is the way you would do it. All right. Now, the other question that normally would come up at this point is, I see a lot of sites where they're doing this with they're doing this with video. So in other words, you'd have video kind of playing in the background behind everything. Can you do that in Muse? Not really. Not really built in, I should say. There are third-party plugins or widgets that will let you do it. And one of my favorite companies that does this, I don't get paid to say this, just one of my favorite companies, it's called muse-themes.com. Muse-themes.com, they're a company that's been around since pretty much the beginning of Muse. And they make widgets and themes and things like that. So for example, if I were to go to their widgets area, or just search for background video. They make all kinds of widgets. They are paid widgets. So in other words, I think they give some away for free, but most of they're in the business for selling these. So let's just try and find one. Background video. And you may be able to find a free one. There may be someone who's already done one for free. Let's see here. Yeah, video full screen backgrounds. That's one of their widgets. If we were to click on this one, you can always, before you purchase one of theirs or download one, you can try it out so you can see it existing or you can see it on an existing site to see what it does. And in some cases, they'll even let you play with it. But this is the way it looks, where there's a video playing in the background that's looping in the background or not looping, up to you, or has no audio or whatever. You're able to choose all of these options, and they're giving you the options here as kind of just showing you a screenshot of what you would be able to do. And it's using HTML video that you're hosting. So it's doing an MP4 and a .webm version if you have it. So you'd have to make those, but then it would just play your video in the background. All right. So it can be done. It's just not a feature that's built into Muse. Muse for You is a good site too. Yeah, Muse for You is a good site too. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. Now, what if I did want to see if there are some out there that may be free, or other companies or whatever? Like I said, I use Muse Themes because they were like one of the first, and I just got hooked on theirs. But if you just want to see what's out there without going to any one particular one right off the bat, then what you do is go to your widget library panel in Muse. Actually, I'm sorry, not your widget library panel. The old library panel. In the library, because when I say old library panel, the library panel, or Muse had a library before CC libraries. So we see CC libraries, and that's the one I encourage people to use today. But before that, there was one actually called library, and you could do the same kind of thing. You put things in the library just for Muse. The CC libraries work across all the CC products and mobile. So if I click online, that little box at the top that said online, it'll take me to resources.muse.adobe.com, where I can find all kinds of widgets. Some are paid, some are free. It's totally up to the developer who made it, how they put it up here. So full screen slideshow covers. Sounds interesting, and that's a freebie. Elegant slideshow, $5. So there are all kinds of developers out there making widgets for you to either get for free or pay for, depending on what it is and who made it. And you can do a search there as well. So if I search background video, let's see what comes up here, or if any come up here, and if any free ones come up here. So here's one, museresources.com, full screen background video for free. Here's one for $6. Here's one for $5. That's a YouTube background video. Here's another one for free with subscription. So free with subscription. Muse Themes, because Muse Themes is a subscription site as well. So it just depends, but there are other ones out there that are free of charge. So pick the one that works for you, and just remember, if Muse doesn't do something out of the box or out of the cloud, as we say, then there might already be a third-party widget for it, whether it's free or paid, depends on the widget. And the way to get to those is just bring up I always just, because I can never remember the URL, I always just bring up the library panel and click the find more library items online. That'll take me to the widgets page. Or I should say Adobe add-ons page. I think there's another way to get to it also from the other applications. You can get to it from the help menu. So like I'm in Photoshop and I want to get to add-ons for Photoshop. I just browse add-ons and that will take me to the page, same site, but for add-ons for Photoshop. And it will load that up. Okay. Just looking at the comments here. All right, that page is loading ever so slowly, but it's loading. Here it comes. Or maybe not. Maybe it gave up. Here it comes. All right, so these are all the add-ons for Photoshop, or InDesign, or Dreamweaver, or Illustrator, or Lightroom, or Muse. So this is just another way to get to them from the help menu in the other applications. And same thing, some of these will be paid, some of these will be free. Just depends on who developed it and how they chose to market it or make it available. All right, so let's head back to Muse. So we looked at two ways to place a graphic. Either just place the graphic on the page, scale it, size it, make it responsive or not. And we looked at a way of adding it to a frame or just a box, dragging out a rectangle and then making it the fill of that rectangle. So you got both ways to do it. And the fill I usually do when I want it to do full width. If I don't need it to do full width, then I'll just place the graphic. Okay, so we've got our graphic in place. What's next? Let's say we want to place some more graphics. So for example, we'll go back to our CC library. And in my CC library, I could bring over this graphic. So I'm just going to drag it over. Let's think about it. Here we go. And I can click. And I see, ooh, it's really big. So let's go ahead and scale that down. Now, unlike the other Adobe applications that have been around for 20, 30 years, I don't have to hold down the Shift key. It will automatically scale proportionally. Yay, Muse, for getting it right. So I can just keep scaling this down. You can also scale it down to a specific size. So if I just say that, hey, I want the width of this to be 200 pixels, I just type in 200 pixels at the top and it will automatically constrain the height to whatever it is. Since this is a square image, they both end up being 200. I can still pick it up at any given time. I can still move it where I want it to be. I can still continue to scale it. If, for example, let's say I want it between my guides, and it will scale. Now, the question I also get is, well, if I'm saving out an image, what resolution should I use? Should I make it the size I need for the page? In other words, whatever that ended up being, let's click on it. Should I just take this into Photoshop and make it 168 pixels wide? You can do that. But here's the, it skips every second. So I'm not sure, Jan, what you mean. So my mouse skips every second. Here, let me drag it across. Is it skipping now? Oh, I see it on my other display. Yeah, it does skip. It's kind of weird. Sorry about that. It's more of a, because it's moving smoothly for me, but it's more the Twitch stream where I see it skipping. So you're right, it is skipping. Okay, but anyway, it's moving smoothly for me. I'll try and move it less or be more direct about it. Okay, anyway, so we got the image in place, and so the question becomes about saving what size. Should I just go ahead in Photoshop and make that 168, or should I make it full size and scale it down and let Muse do its thing? Always let Muse do its thing, unless you're making an image for a site that's in standard resolution. Remember when we created the site and we did site properties? And we told it to be resolution high DPI, 2x. If I had left it on standard, then the 168 that I would go make in Photoshop would be fine. If not, then it's best to let Muse do it, because Muse will make the two graphics it needs. Because I brought the image in larger than it needs to be for that spot, what will happen is when Muse makes it that size to fit, it will also make it 2 times. It will make one that's 168. It'll make one that's 2 times 168 for high DPI displays. If I, on a standard resolution, then I could do it either way. I could either go make it 168 in Photoshop, save it out, bring it in, or I could just let Muse do it and it will make 1. So, in other words, why go to Photoshop and do all that prep if Muse can do it and do it effectively? In other words, if I bring in a 4,000 pixel wide image and I shrink it down to 168 or whatever double that is, we don't want to upload a 4,000 pixel wide image to the site and let people have to view that, because it's just going to make the whole site load slowly. So when Muse outputs this site, it's going to optimize that graphic and the above graphic for whatever sizes it needs based on how you laid it out on the page, not what the original size was. And again, if you bring in the original size and you're not scaling it, great. It won't have to touch it. It will do it exactly like you brought it in. But if you are scaling it down, you're giving it some room to not only make the size you need, but to make that 2x size as well from all that resolution that it needs for your high DPI display sites. Okay, so next up, now that we got this in place, like I said, by default, it comes in responsive width and height. So let's say that I don't want it to be responsive width and height. What happens? Well, let's look at it both ways. Let's say, and by the way, let's also align it and keep it to the left. So let's say that I keep it responsive width and height. When we preview this page in browser, we'll do it both ways. That will show me this page, and it will show me that image at the size that I made it. As I pull this down, it only starts to scale it when I hit not below 960. Because remember, we're at the full width of my 1080p display here. That's bigger than 960. So it doesn't start touching anything until I hit 960 and go below 960. So because that's the width of the site we set up. So here, nothing. I must have hit 960 because it's starting to scale down. And we're also at the edge of the image in the page. So it will scale. And this is why I don't like it scaling automatically for everything, because now that's too small. I don't want it to do that. I don't need it to be that small. So that's it's nice that it scales it for you based on the size of the page, but you may reach a point where it's scaling it too much. So here, let me go back. And now we can deal with this one of two ways. We can either say, don't scale it at all, and I'll deal with it as the page gets smaller. Or I can say, go ahead and scale it until it gets too small, and then I'll tell you to stop scaling it. So let's try that first. So right now we're at the 960, where it will start scaling it, and it scales it. I'm okay with that. And let's say right about here, it's getting a little small for my taste. Then what I could do is add a breakpoint, because this is where my design breaks, in my opinion. I can add that breakpoint, and then I can click on that graphic and now do whatever I want. I could scale it back up and then have the scaling start from this point down again, or I could just turn off scaling and scale it back up and don't have it scale anymore. So let's say I do the first one. Let's say I scale it back up to where, oh, sorry, bad habit. I'm holding down the shift key and it's making it non-proportional. Okay, here we go. I scale it back up to where I like it. So now when we go here, it's that size, and it will start to scale down, start to scale down, start to scale down. We hit that breakpoint, boom, it pops back up to the size I want it to be. And now it will start from there, scaling it down, scaling it down, scaling it down. And now I'm okay with that. So you can pick and choose as you work with your site how your graphics interact. And if they get to a point to where they're getting too tiny, because now that's not too tiny when I go all the way down to a phone size. It was too tiny before if I let it scale all the way up from where I had it all the way down to the size. So I stopped it in between and said, let's start over. I don't want you scaling down. Or I could say at 960, for example, this is another way you can do it. At the 960 breakpoint, let's turn off the responsive scaling, none. And then at the 646, it's on. So I could say from 960 down to 646, don't touch it. But from 646 on down, scale it down. Totally up to you. So now nothing's going to happen here all the way down till I hit the 960. And because I scaled it up, it's going to jump up a little bit. And then it's going to start to scale down from there. Any way you want to do it. Totally up to you. It's your site. All right. So if we go back out, great, we got that graphic doing what I want it to do. Now let's talk about organization. So let's say we bring in some more graphics. And let me go back to my CC libraries. What I mean by organization is organization on the page. Let's see what I've got in this library that's worth doing. All right, here, we'll bring in this one. And we're going to go ahead and scale this one to be this size. And then we bring in, this one. And we'll scale this one to be this size, and we'll move it down. And we'll bring in another one and put it next to it. We'll bring in this one. I'm just randomly bringing things in so I can show you a technique for when the images don't necessarily fit well together based on their position. Okay, so sorry about that. I got the images set where I want them to be at 960. So the only other thing now I need to tell it to do is what to do as far as alignment. So again, since this is responsive, you always want to be mindful of, do I want this to stay to the right, left, or center? I want it to stay to the right. I want that one to stay relative to the right of where it is now. I want this one to stay relative to the right of where it is now. And now the question is, well, do I want them to resize? Yes or no? Totally up to you. Let's pretend for a second that we don't. Well, yeah, we'll let them resize. We'll let them resize for now. I want to see what happens first before I change it. So far so good. If I pull this down, so far so good. Now that one on the left, because it's trying to stay relative to where it was, is drifting a little bit. So I told you a trick around that before. One of my tricks might be, well, I don't want it to drift. I kind of want it to stay relative. Since I can only make it stay relative to one side of the page or the other or the center. I want it to stay relative to the other one that's already on the page. So I already showed you that trick, and that is, let me go ahead and turn this, or did I do it? Maybe I didn't even do it. Hold on. Oh, I didn't do it. That's why that one's shifting. I was going to say group them together, but let's see what happens if I turn that one on. Yeah, it's still drifting. Okay. So I don't want it to drift, just like I didn't want the social media icons to drift on Tuesday. So in this case, we're just going to take both of these and group them together. object group. And so now they're grouped, and now it's staying relative to the right side. All right, so now if we pull this down, okay, you shouldn't be moving. Hold on. Let's turn that one off. Hold on, I think my group got screwed up because they were both set to be relative to the right individually. Okay, now it's grouped together. There we go. And now let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. Okay, so now we go ahead and do this, and they shouldn't drift. Oh, God. As soon as I say it, it starts drifting. That one's good. You know what? Let me try it again. Let me just get rid of these. Try it one more way. Okay, not going to set them to be left or right yet, and also not going to set them to resize just yet. So don't resize. And scale up or down. Okay, so now they're not resizing. Let's get them back aligned. Okay, now we'll group them together. Object group. And now we'll align the group. Oh, wait, undo. Not resizing, not resizing. Okay, now we'll group them together. Group, and now we'll align to the right. And hopefully that won't drift. I'm not sure why it's drifting. Oh, it's not. Wait. Is it? Okay, it's not drifting. The other one's just getting smaller. I get it now. Okay, so, oh, now it's drifting. Hold on. And the reason it's drifting there, hold on, is because it's in a different breakpoint differently. Okay, so this is kind of a catch-22 to where you're putting things down after you've established other breakpoints. When you put something down and it automatically gets added to the other breakpoints. So when I go to this breakpoint, see how it's there in a different spot? Because it got added to that breakpoint as soon as I put those items in it. So what I would want to do is, actually I don't want to do it that way. Let's tell this to hide in other breakpoints for now. We can always add it back in. Or we can even say, now that we hit it from the other breakpoints, let me make sure it's gone. Yep, it's gone. We could then say that we want to copy size and position to all breakpoints. So in other words, I'm now resetting those breakpoints to where they're in the exact same spot in every case. And again, it just depends on what you did first and what order. So by not doing it before I added the breakpoints, I'm now saying add this item in, and it automatically got replicated to the other breakpoints based on those other breakpoints. So it just depends on which order you do things in. So now it's okay because I copied it to the other breakpoints with the same grouping, same everything. So the one at the top is going to scale. The one at the bottom is not going to scale. And the one at the bottom now should stay relative because they're grouped together. So it's staying relative. The other ones are scaling until you get to a point in that breakpoint we got there. And now what I can say is, you know what? I'm okay with that, doing it the way it was doing it up to this spot. But when it gets to this spot, I need to make room for something else. So what I can do at this breakpoint is I could then say, move this up here. Move this one down here. Let's put an arrow in there. So, not going to move, not going to move, not going to move, not going to move. And then when we get to this one, boom, it moves. It shifts in order. based on the arrangement that I just told it to do. Now when I get here, it's again continuing to go down and continuing to stay relative to that side. So let's go in and change that. Let's go to this breakpoint and let's say that this is going to now, just trying to decide what I want it to do. Maybe something like that. And also, the other thing I don't want to happen anymore is I don't want this to scale anymore. That's as small as I want it to get. And now that should not get any smaller. But now it's going to start colliding with this one because it's not getting smaller. So at this point, you might decide, okay, well, while we're at it, while we're moving this stuff around, maybe she needs to move or maybe this stuff needs to move under her. Totally up to you. So I can say take all of these and move them down here. Maybe that's going to be better. And instead of aligning to the right at this point, go ahead and align to the left. So now that's going to give me more room to play as we scale down. And then I can get to a point to where I can say, yeah, I'm starting to hit the edge here. Do I want to add a breakpoint? I can. And then at this point I can say from here on out, this is just going to scale. So now that's just going to get smaller. And we're good. Everything still fits. So let's see what my crazy page is going to do for me. All right, I see a questionnaire is uploading to a server original from the library. Think about it. All right, I can't see the top of that question, so I'll go look. But if I understand what you're asking, you don't have to worry about the image size if you're pulling it from the library. Muse will use the size, the maximum size, and then scale everything accordingly. So if that's the question, then yes, you're good. No, and you're not being annoying, I agree. So whether you're pulling it from a library, pulling it from your hard drive, pulling it from wherever, pull in a higher resolution and let Muse take care of the scaling when it uploads the site. You don't have to worry about that. Muse has always done that from day one. Okay, so we got our page in place, and again, we're looking at it the way we set it up. It's not going to do anything until I hit 960. Once I hit 960, things start to scale, things start to shift, and then once I hit whatever that other breakpoint was, things start to move around and move over. She's still scaling. We can turn that scaling off or not. We can turn that scaling on or not. It's totally up to you. So not only can you change what happens from a position, location, scaling aspect in a breakpoint, you can also decide what you want to see in a particular breakpoint. So for example, when we get down to 403, which is the breakpoint we created, maybe I don't want to see this anymore at all. Maybe I want to see something else instead. So I can either do this one of two ways. I can either say this graphic just doesn't work on a phone, or maybe it's something I don't want to talk about on a small screen. Maybe if it had like this text on it, which is just a serial number or ID number. Maybe that ID number is just too small to read. So I don't even want to see this graphic because it's the wrong graphic on a small screen. So what I can do is I can either say hide in breakpoint from here, from a right click, or it's also controlled by layers. So if I go to my layers menu, or layers icon, we have layer 1, which is the only thing we've been working on thus far. If I twirl it down, that rectangle is the one that's selected right here with the blue dot. I can just turn it off. That's the same thing as hide in breakpoint. So we see it here, but once we get down to 403, it disappears. And at 403, I can say put something else in that's easier to read. Maybe I have a different graphic where the text is bigger. Maybe I have something totally different, or maybe we just don't need that graphic and I just want to hide it and then move everything else up. Totally up to you. So let's say we're going to replace it with a different graphic. I go back to my CC libraries, I find a different graphic, and of course, we're just playing around with this as we go, but maybe I want bigger text, so we'll add this one in. Oh, too big. Hold on. We'll scale it from here. It'll be easier. There we go. So the science of goodness at work. So that's going to be here now instead of that graphic because it's easier to read. Let's say that that's what it said as a little serial number, but now it's the bigger text and we don't need a graphic at all. So at this point, here's the problem. By adding it here at 403, that also got added at 646 and 960. Because whenever you place anything on a page in Muse, no matter which breakpoint you're on, it automatically adds it to all the other breakpoints in whatever spot it thinks it should add it in. So keep in mind, I don't want to see the science of goodness at work on the other breakpoints. I only want to see it here on down. So while I've added it here, the thing you got to remember is and here I'll show it to you. Yes, it did get added here. Yes, it did get added here, and then I have to move it around and scale it and do all those things. I don't need it on those other breakpoints. I only need it here on down. So to have it not be on the other breakpoints, what we're going to do is we're going to say hide in other breakpoints. So you have hide in breakpoint, which is the same thing as turning it off in the layers panel. And hide in other breakpoints is the same thing as turning it off in the layers panel per breakpoint. So this is just doing it for me all at once. Hide in other breakpoints. Now it's gone here. Now it's gone here. And it only appears here on down. So, and we can set this one, which I think it defaults to scaling. So that one will scale. And, well, cool. I'm glad you liked that or you discovered that as a new technique, or I showed you that as a new technique. So now you got it. And by the way, while we're here, let's go back to 403. We don't need that gap of space in between, so we can now pull this up. Or maybe from here on out, we want this centered. And we can center it. All right, so now this is what we would have. Preview the page in browser. Why do I preview it in browser? Because to me, the browser is real, meaning that's the way it's really going to look in a browser, versus I could preview it in Muse. Muse has a preview panel, which has WebKit built in. But I just always prefer to render out the HTML and show it in the browser. Just a personal thing. All right. Sometimes rendering the graphics or HTML does take an extra second or two, depending on what you got on the page or what you got going on. Although it shouldn't take that long, for what I've done at least. Thinking about it, thinking about it. Uh-oh, something's wrong. Oh, I don't know what that font it's using. Okay, that might be a problem. All right, but anyway, we've got this in place, and it was having a problem with that last graphic. There it is. So it worked, though. I put something out there. Okay, so we get down to that 403 breakpoint, which is right about here, and it switches. It swaps out that graphic for the one that was getting hard to read, which we're pretending, to the one that's easier to read. And so you can pick and choose not only where things are going to be, what size they're going to be, but also whether they appear or not at all. So we did it with the menu. We already showed how to do that on Tuesday. We swapped our menu out for a different menu in the master page. So you can do that on any of your content pages as well. All right, so we got that. We got a handle on what graphics do. We have a couple more things to learn about graphics. So let's actually, we're going to come back to this page. We're going to put some text on this page, but let's go to a different page. I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques. Let's go back to the site, and let's go to our products page, for example. Now, the other thing you can, or let's talk about the graphic formats you can place. Obviously, and these are probably no surprise, you can place a JPEG. We've been doing that. You can place a GIF or animated GIF. We did that. Or we haven't done that, but you can do that. You can place a SWIFT file. If you want to use Flash, you can place a SWIFT file. Most people don't anymore, but you can. You can also place a ping with transparency. That will work. So what I'm naming so far are all the formats you could place from the web. You could place, any of these can be seen with any browser. Except, of course, with Flash, you would need a Flash plugin. But everything else can be seen with standard browsers. JPEG, PNG, and GIF. The other format, which is one of my favorites to place now, I have one in my library, but whether I have it in a library or not, doesn't really matter. This is SVG. So even though I place it at 100%, I can scale up on this all day long. It's going to render out beautifully on this page because it's scalable vectors. So SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And if I preview this page in the browser, it will render out hopefully a nice looking vector image with nice vectors in it, even though I messed up on the side there of my whatever shape this was supposed to be. But anyway, there we go. So we have a live streaming icon with nice vectors in it that I can make any size that I want. Here, let me pick a better vector than that. Something we can actually see. All right, here, we'll do this. Let's fill that with a color. And let's make it so that it stretches the browser width. And now we'll place this one. Pull this down. And we'll make it nice and big. All right, so same thing. This is a, should be SVG graphic. Let's go ahead and preview page of browser. Even though I made it bigger than the original, it still scales up nicely because it's vector. So if you're using Illustrator, yes, you can use vectors. If you're using Illustrator, just save them out as SVG or put them in your library as SVG. And then they will come over to Muse beautifully and scalable, even scaling up beyond its original size. And of course, scaling down is not a problem. So that was just a point to let you know that you can put in SVG. Now, so far we've talked about JPEG, PNG, GIF, SWIFT, now SVG. There's one more. And there's one more format you can put in one of two ways. File menu, place. And I'm going to go grab from my demo files, CC demo files. I should have in my Muse folder, which is right there, I should have assets to place. And okay, note what kind of format this is. PSD. Yes, I can place a PSD in Muse. And I can import the composite image. So why would I place a PSD? PSDs normally don't work on the web, right? Because browsers aren't really rendering PSDs these days. But that worked. I'm looking at it in my browser. It rendered it. Because just like everything else, Muse is making the graphic on the fly. So it made the JPEG for this image. Then, Terry, why bother with a PSD if it's just going to make it a JPEG anyway? What advantage is there to having a PSD in Muse? One advantage, and that is if it's an image that is constantly changing, and what I mean by changing, you're adding things, you're doing things to the image, and every time you want to make a change to it, you just want to change the Photoshop file and not have to render out images every time. So if I do Edit Original right here from Muse with a right click, then that will take me over to Photoshop where I can turn layers on and off, save it, close it, come back to Muse, and it will update. That's why you use PSDs. Because you can just keep making changes to the file, and Muse will keep updating every time you make a change, everywhere you've used that graphic in all your sites and all your pages. And it will generate a new JPEG every time you upload the site, or update the site, I should say. So that is why you would use a PSD. If it's a static graphic that's never going to change, yeah, go ahead and make a JPEG. No reason to use a PSD. But if it's a image that is going to be changed from time to time. Here's an example that I use on one of my sites. Here, and I don't have to use it as much as I used to have to use it, but I didn't really mean to do it that way. But let me show you what it is. Let me do a place, and let me grab it, and there it is. Calendar icon. All right. So now if I want to change the date, edit in Photoshop, edit original, takes me to Photoshop, change it to, what are we in, June, and change it to the 10th, and away we go. And save it, close it, go back to Muse, it updates. Now, that's no longer a great example, and here's why. And if the PSD is opened as a smart object from a raw file, Muse can open it raw. Well, yes, Muse can use a PSD file that contains the raw files as a smart object. So yes, you can get around raw files that way. But anyway, the reason that this is not as much of a concern as it used to be is because the reason I did it this way before is because this is back when I was using Muse and it had the 3 separate layouts for tablet, phone, and desktop. And that calendar icon was on the home page of tablet, on the home page of phone, and on the home page of desktop, and I didn't want to have to change it 3 times. So I would place the graphic on all 3 layouts, update the Photoshop file, come back, all 3 layouts are updated. So I'd only have to update it once. Now, because that's responsive, I could just have the blank calendar icon, and now that I've got Typekit fonts, I can just put those fonts in whatever sizes I want on the calendar icon and now just change it once. So I don't have to do this example as much as I used to unless this were going to be on more than one page. And not every page, because then I just put on the master. But if it were going to be on more than one page and I didn't want to have to update it more than once, then yes. And so someone just said, isn't it better to use the graphic without the font? So I was already explaining that. Yes, it is now, but back when I had to update it 3 times, it wasn't. So that's one of the other reasons I would do it, is if something's on that graphic that is constantly changing, other than text, then I would do it. Or I want the text to be stylized. So for example, here's another reason why you might do it. Well, let's see. Well, let me try something first. I may have made my own case obsolete here. So let me go ahead and just make this bigger. We're going to get into text in a few minutes here, but let's go ahead and make this bigger. I want to see if this can be done. I don't think it can be, but I just want to check. Maybe. Ah, you can put a drop shadow on it too. Okay. So yeah, I was going to say, in case it had an effect on it, like a drop shadow, but you can do a drop shadow in Muse. Okay, let's go make my case a different way then. Let's do it this way. Right click, edit original, and, well, but what if your text layer had effects? Let's go and do a bevel and emboss. And let's not do a pillow emboss. Let's do our outer bevel or inner bevel. unless it had some effect on it that you couldn't do in Muse, like that. Then that's where you would still make the case of doing it in Photoshop. But that's it. Other than that, if you're just using standard text, you're absolutely right. Put the blank calendar icon in, type your text on top of it, change your text whenever you want. And ultimately, that's what I changed it to. Like, I changed it to just a blank calendar icon with text on top of it. But back in the old days of fixed layouts, I did it this way. Okay, so that's working with graphics from a PSD standpoint because it's editable. And now that I made that change, if I want to change this again till one last thing, if I want to do this one more time, because it has that effect on it now, that effect is still editable text. So today's the 10th, 11, 12, 13, 14. My next show is on the 14th. And so now if I were to say that, it maintains that bevel and emboss, close it, save it, Muse updates with the bevel and emboss. And it should render out a nice graphic from that if we look at that graphic in the browser. Oh, it's rendering that thing again. There we go. So we got the nice bevel and emboss on it that we wouldn't have had if we'd just done the text in Muse. Okay, so that would be a rare scenario where you would do it. Now there's one more example where you would use a Photoshop file. And we can go make one right now. Let's go do it this way. Let's go to Photoshop. And let's get rid of this. And let's make a new document. Sorry. Make a new document. We're going to call it button. And we're going to make it in pixels. And we'll make it, oh, I don't know, 150 by 150. I don't care about the resolution. It'll do its thing. And I'm going to say that it's going to be transparent. Okay. Click OK. So we got our image in place, or our foundation in place for this. And now we're going to go ahead and go back to our icons. And with our icons, Muse is so easy to work with that sometimes you feel bad for taking money for a project. Never feel bad for taking money for a project. People are paying you to do what you do, not because of the tool you use. They're paying you for your time. All right, or they're paying you for your abilities. I shouldn't even say your time. So let's say, for example, we wanted to take this Facebook icon. We'll bring that over. And we'll let that come in. And we'll duplicate that layer. Oh, sorry, trash, not duplicate. Duplicate that layer. And now we've got our duplicate layer, and we're going to just call this one over. And we're going to call this one normal. And that one doesn't matter what it's called. Actually, we don't need it anymore. Throw that away. Okay, so we got normal. We'll turn off over for a minute, and let's do something to normal. Let's go in and add an effect to it. And we'll do a color overlay. And we'll say that its normal state is going to be, we'll pick a blue, since it is Facebook, and we'll say that the opacity is like that. Okay, we'll click OK again. And actually, it's just easier to duplicate that layer. Let's duplicate that layer again. And now we'll call this one over because it already has the effect on it, so that's why it's easier. And we'll just go into this one and just bump it up to 100. So now what we just did was we made a 2-layer Photoshop file, one where the blue is slightly less opaque and one where we see the full blue color. So now we'll go ahead and save this out as a PSD. And we'll call it Facebook button. And we'll save it wherever we want. Take care, Mad Mips. Have a good one. And now that we saved out that PSD, we'll come back to Muse, and we'll do a place, but this time we'll do a different kind of place. And this is the special place for placing Photoshop buttons. So how does this work? The way this works is you go to your file menu, you say place Photoshop button. So everything else we've been doing has been a drag and drop or place. Place regular graphics, place PSDs, place whatever. But when you say place Photoshop button, that brings up a different kind of interface looking specifically for a PSD or Photoshop document that you're going to make changes to or change the way it works. So we're going to go in, we're going to choose that as the one we just did, we're going to open it up, and now notice what I get. My rollover state is going to be from the, actually I should say, from the, my rollover state is going to be over, correct? And my normal state is going to be, no, I want my normal state to be that, and I want my over state to be the composite of the two layers. There we go. All right, so now that I've got that in place, I'm basically able to pick and choose which layers I want to apply or use the composite of the layers. So now we'll click OK, and we'll get this, going to be hard to see. Actually, it's not doing it the way I want it to. Hold on for a minute. It may not be respecting my color overlays. Hold on. Yeah, it's not. All right, let's delete that for a second. And let's go ahead and just render those out. Layer, and we'll do a rasterize that smart object, rasterize the layer itself. Yeah, it's not taking it. Okay. Well, it's because it's a smart object more than likely, but let's try it. Layer, all right, that should do it. It should have respected it, but for some reason it didn't. All right, let's try it again, save it. Place Photoshop button. Still not respecting that. Dun, 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 dun. All right, let's do it this way. So it wasn't the smart object, something about the effect. All right, I'll go here. And same thing here. Okay, so now it's no longer effects, just regular layers. Saved it, head back to Muse. And I'll bring that up to the Muse team as well. It should respect the layer styles, but for whatever reason, it didn't. Now it does. Or now it's using it because, or now it's doing it because they're no longer layer styles. All right, so normal state would be the slightly less blue one. The rollover state would be the full-on blue. So now when I place that as a button, I can place that anywhere I want, any size that I want. We'll go ahead and place it, and now that it's there, the way this would work. Now this button doesn't do anything right now. It's just a button. So if we go look at this on the web, clicking it won't do anything, but we should be able to see the behavior. Preview page in browser. And there we are. So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do using the Photoshop layers, minus the layer styles for whatever reason. But it's basically treating those layers as different states of this graphic. So as I roll over it, I get the blue. As I roll away from it, I don't get the blue. Now, keep in mind, that only matters when we can watch tutorials all day long, but when something goes wrong, I know. And yeah, and that's the thing about live streaming is that had this been a pre-canned tutorial and I ran into that, I would have stopped the recording, fixed it, or did something different or explained it different. But because you're seeing this live, you're getting to see what happens when it goes wrong and how to troubleshoot it and what to do and what to take care of, how to fix it. So you saw me go through my process. But anyway, the thing I want to point out is that while this rollover is great, that's cool all day long on the desktop. On a mobile device, there's no concept of a rollover with your finger. There's nothing to roll over. So on a mobile device, they would never see the darker blue one. They would only see this one. So what you might want to do is go back to Photoshop for a second. Take that over layer. We'll add it into the same library here, into the icons library. So now we just added the darker blue version of that. And then when you get back to Muse, keep in mind that that looks great and works great on the desktop, but it will not make a difference on the mobile version of this. So if you were to go down to, let's say, a tablet, which is typically 768. So if I go in, add breakpoint. Oh, sorry, not here. What do I want to do? I want to go in. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Add breakpoint at 768, which is typically a tablet size. There's no real such thing as a specific size anymore, but typically tablets start at 768 on down to phones. So if I add a breakpoint at 768, what I would then do is say, oh, you know what? At this point, hide this one. Or let's bring the other one in first so we know where it goes. Bring this one in. You know what? Before we even do that, hold on, I moved it. Let's not move it. Put it back to where it was. And then bring this one in. Get it the exact size we need it. And now that that one's in, this one we're going to say hide in other breakpoints. And the one below it, we're going to say hide in this breakpoint. So now when we're zoomed out, we have a rollover version. When we're down to a tablet and smaller, we have the static version that doesn't turn light blue. So those are other considerations that you'd want to make when you're thinking about your desktop all the way down to a small screen sizes. At smaller sizes or mobile devices, rollovers are irrelevant. So if your normal state is not something you'd want it to look like, then it's best to swap it out at the smaller breakpoints. All right. Hey, Vicky, how's it going? Okay, and let's see. Okay, so if we were to preview the page, we could see it turn blue as we got smaller, but I think you guys get the idea. All right, so that was pretty much it from a placing graphics standpoint. We kind of did it all. We placed static graphics. We placed Now we haven't done slideshows, but we placed graphics in containers like the rectangle. We placed images from the library. We placed images from the hard drive. We placed Photoshop native files. We showed how they update when you edit original. We placed Photoshop files as buttons and saw how that process works, using them as rollovers. So that, other than using slideshows, that's pretty much it from a graphics standpoint. Now we're going to go back to that page I told you we'd go back to, the home page. And now we're going to talk about text. Because text, of course, is very important on websites. And so far, we haven't really dealt with text from a standpoint of how it would work in this design or any other design for that matter. So text, like in Adobe InDesign, is contained in a frame. So if I grab the text tool and I just click, nothing happens. I can't start typing. Just like I can't do that in InDesign. You can't just click on the page and start typing. You always click the type tool and draw out a frame, whether you want the frame to be 1 column or 2 or how many ever you want it to be. Now you've got a container for your text. Yeah, I do non-photography as well. All right, so actually I was doing this before photography. So I got my text frame there. Now, of course, you just put whatever text you want it to say. So let's see if I've got this option here. I just want to check something. No, I don't have the option I want. I was just seeing had this been the feature had it been brought over from InDesign, and it has not yet. So let's go in and say, you know what? Let me check one thing first. The science of goodness at work. That was the text we were dealing with before. I know, nothing more boring than watching someone type. But we got to have some text to work with. Okay, so the science of goodness at work. This is how text works in Adobe Muse CC. There are things you have to consider when working with responsive designs. Although the text doesn't scale, the frame does. Okay. All right, so now I got my text in place. Before we even get into the responsive nature of the text frame itself, let's start talking about the fonts and the styling and the formatting. We got like 18 minutes left. Let's talk about how this is going to work. So, for example, let's say I want the science of goodness at work to be bigger and bolder and a different font and all that. Well, as far as your type commands go, they're the same as they always have been. In other words, you're not doing anything that you hadn't been doing before in InDesign or Illustrator or Photoshop. For example, first time I ever did text in Muse, without even thinking, I started using my keyboard shortcut that I learned 10 years ago in InDesign to make the text bigger. Mac Command Shift greater than, PC Control Shift greater than. And I was like, oh wait, I'm in Muse, and that worked, awesome. So I was able to make the text bigger. Same thing if I wanted to center it. Command Shift C to center, Command Shift R to right justify, Command Shift L to left justify. So those things work. Wrong keyboard. The only thing that is different is that when you were doing all of this for in InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop for print, you controlled everything from the standpoint of printing to a printer. In other words, you control the printer, you control the font, you control everything. When you're doing a web design or web page, you don't control everyone's browser and what they see and so forth and so on. You don't know who has what fonts installed. So we talked about it briefly, I think, on Tuesday, but now we're going to talk about it in more detail. So notice my default font, which is a font I would never really use by default in any other kind of design, is Arial. Arial is the default font. You know why? Because Arial is on 99% of the devices out there that would be viewing your page. It's on desktop computers, no matter what platform it is. It's on our operating system. It's on mobile devices, again, no matter what platform, iOS, Android, Windows, whatever. It's on everything. So Arial is the font I don't have to worry about. What other fonts don't I have to worry about? Well, there's a set of fonts called standard fonts here in Muse. I believe it's still 11. Let's make sure, because you always use that number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, these 11 fonts are standard fonts, meaning that if you use these, in 99% of the cases out there, your page is going to display just like you see it. Because these 11 fonts have been built into devices for many, many, many years, for 10, 15, 20 years. So anything viewing your site, if you use these, would be great. The problem is Comic Sans. Okay, no. The problem is that it contains 11 fonts that we really don't like to use, like this one. So rather than use Geneva or Nothing Says Party Like Times Roman, instead of using these fonts, we tend to want to use better fonts that are more modern looking, fonts that match our corporate look or the rest of our collateral. So in this case, when in doubt, use Comic Sans. I have to use that. But so rather than use those 11, you're thinking, well, I see my other fonts here. I see all the fonts I have on my system. Can I use Clavo Bold or Clavo Light? It's in my computer. How come I can't use it? The reason you can't use it is, who else has Clavo Light? I bet 99% of the people coming to your site don't use Clavo Light or don't have it on their systems. So they're going to see something different anyway. And the other reason, now why are these here? Then why does Muse even show them to me? Because there may be a time, and here, let me give you an example. I used to use a font for my logo, for my photography logo. So let me go ahead and type it in. We'll do, before I even do that, let me go to my, go to my text. There we go. All right. So let's do Terry White Photography. And Terry White Photography would normally be small caps, but I don't have a small caps option, so we'll just do all caps. And we would do space it out a little bit. I'm just using Option right arrow key to give me more kerning or tracking between the letters. And then the font that I would use would be Trojan Pro. And that would be my logo. Now, what if you don't have Trojan Pro? Well, notice what happens when I choose any of my fonts. When I use my fonts, it says that it's going to export that out as an image, which is not a good thing. But it's not a horrific, oh my God, don't ever do it thing either. What this is simply telling you is every time you can use your fonts, and every time you do it, it's going to make a graphic instead of that actually being text on the web. That's normally a bad thing. You wouldn't want all your paragraph types to be text or graphics. You wouldn't want your headlines in every page to be graphics. But there are times where you need the type to look a specific way, and you're going to go to Photoshop and make a graphic anyway. That's when you would use this. In other words, I need, if I were using my old logo, I need it to be in Trojan Pro. And guess what? I know everyone doesn't have Trojan Pro, so therefore, I would go to Photoshop, type my logo in Trojan Pro, style it the way I wanted to style it, make it the color I wanted to make it, and then make it a graphic. So all this is doing is saving me the time to do that. So if I go preview this page in the browser, it will make this page for me. Oh, this is the one with that. I gotta go delete that other thing off the layer. And it will render out a graphic and upload that to the site and show people Trojan Pro. They wouldn't be able to highlight it, meaning drag their cursor across it. They wouldn't be able to search for it. They wouldn't be able to do all the things that text can do. That's why we don't want to use this everywhere. But it's okay to use it in this case. I need it to look like this in this one spot. I'm going to go make a graphic anyway. So might as well let Muse make it. How does this work with Typekit and web fonts? They don't require other viewers to have the fonts installed. That's correct. And as soon as this page comes up, I'll show you that in the next 10 minutes before we leave. So far we talked about 2 of the 3 types of fonts you would be able to use in the Muse page. Yes, I'm going to go delete that as soon as I can, or before I preview this again. But anyway, we scroll down. Oh my God, there's Trojan Pro. And guess what? Trojan Pro is a graphic. The same graphic I would have go make in Photoshop anyway. So this is when it's okay to use your font as a graphic, because you would do it anyway. Where it's not okay is to use it here and to use it there and to use it on every page and every headline, and just because I like the font. That's when you wouldn't do it. So let's answer the Typekit question since we only have a few minutes left. Now, I want this to not be Arial and the other 10, and I don't want it to be one of the fonts that's going to make a graphic. I want it to look better, but I want it to be real type. So how does that work? If I go to my font menu and scroll up, I've got one more category: web fonts, standard fonts, and system fonts. So we're going to go up to web fonts. Web fonts, if I click add web fonts, gives me 3 choices. It gives me fonts from Typekit, Edge web fonts, and self-hosted fonts. Typekit is a fairly new addition to Muse, I think within the last 6 months or so. And what this does is give you the access to the Typekit library to use any font you want. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to pick Azote. And when I click OK, or before I click OK, the Edge web fonts have been in Muse since day one. That's a subset of web fonts, like 400 or so fonts, that have always worked in Muse, and they're served up by Adobe's servers. Typekit is served up by Adobe's Typekit servers. And self-hosted means you went and created, bought, downloaded, found a web font, but it doesn't exist here and you want to use it, a special font that maybe you even had made for you. Same thing. Any one of these 3 categories, whether it's hosted by Adobe, the first 2, or hosted by your site, the third one. And by the way, if I go to the third one, this is what it looks like. Browse, find my self-host, find my web font, add it in, or drag and drop them in. Once I click OK, it's adding that Azote font to my copy of Muse so that it's in the font menu. Once it's in the font menu, I'll be able to then use it throughout my entire design. I use it on every page, use it as a default style sheet, whatever. Once I use that font, what happens when someone views the page? So let me go use it first. Scroll up, and there it is, and I get all the different styles to use it. So let's use Azote Bold. And so now I've got that font, and I can go make it bigger again. I can go choose whatever color I want for it. So let's go to our swatches here. And let's pick a nice red color for it. And so I've used that font. I've used that color. I'm not crazy about the font, but I used it. And now again, let's go, by the way, before we render this out again, let's go delete that other thing. And we'll worry about the mess we just created in a minute, but let's go delete this. This is giving me issues. Okay, good. All right, so now let's preview this page in browser again. It should happen a little quicker now that we deleted that offending object. All right, and there it is. The science of goodness at work. That's not a graphic. It is actual text. It's searchable text that anyone on the web will be able to view. So how does that work? So these Typekit fonts are free to use, right? You won't get in any trouble, right? You're right. You won't get in any trouble. This is part of your Creative Cloud membership. That's why it's built into Muse. So anyone viewing my site or this page, Chrome doesn't know anything about Azote, whatever the name of that font was. How is Chrome seeing it? Because when it rendered out the HTML for me to preview this page, one line of code got written that says, everywhere this font is being called, go get it from Adobe's Typekit servers and display it on the person's browser. So it's being hosted by the Typekit servers. You don't have to worry about it. So the normal questions I would get at this point is, what if I design it for a client? Is that okay? Yes, it's okay. What if I, 10 years from now, leave my Creative Cloud membership? What about the hundreds of thousands of sites I've created? Do all those fonts stop working? No, they don't. They keep working. What else? That's pretty much it. So the font is encoded, the line of code is encoded in the site. Typekit's built into Muse for you to continue editing. Once your membership is over, if you decide to leave Creative Cloud, you just don't get to edit anymore, but any sites that are already up continue to work indefinitely. And that's why Typekit is a great thing to be able to have. I can use, thousands of actual, real, good-looking fonts. I don't have to worry about hosting them myself, although that's an option now. If I do want to go find a font that's not on Typekit, I can host it myself, and away you go. You will need a CC or Typekit account to access it, yes, to continue to edit. But once it's up online, like if I were to publish this page and I fall off the planet and I no longer am a Creative Cloud member anymore, that page will continue to work. In other words, the code in this page is not tied to an account. It's not tied to a membership. Once you built, just like when you, for example, here's a good way to look at it. If I sign up for Creative Cloud for a month, and I build a page in InDesign and make a PDF, and then I stop my membership a month later, do all the PDFs stop working? No, the PDFs would work. Everywhere I sent the PDFs to, they would still work. The documents you created with Creative Cloud continue to be documents, just like the website you created with Creative Cloud continues to be a website. The editing tools is what you would lose access to. All right, and you never knew about this. Well, that's why you're watching, so you can learn about stuff like this. So that is how Typekit works. And the only difference between that and a self-hosted font, so for example, I could use that same font down here, by the way. I could say, go get Azote and make it light. Or no, light's too light. Let's go make it regular instead. And there we go, and it's a small font, so we'll make it a little bigger. And I can use that font anywhere I want now. That's text, and that text will be served up to everybody that views my site. So the only difference is, if we go back and say that we want web fonts one more time, and yes, you can add as many of these as you want. There's right now 1,356 families to choose from. Tons of different fonts you can use on your site and your design. So the only difference is self-hosted means you went and got or built a font. You put it in the right formats, which, by the way, there are even sites out there that will convert your TrueType fonts into web fonts that will work here. I've done that. And now that's hosted with the rest of your site with whatever company hosts your site. It's just like any other file that gets uploaded with your Muse site. So if I go find a font called Terry White, and I add that as a self-hosted font, and I'm hosting with Bluehost as my provider, it gets uploaded with the rest of my site. I don't have to worry about anything because that's a feature that's built into Muse. So whether it's the original 400 or some odd web edge fonts that we still have because people still use them on their sites, or whether it's the 1,000 plus Typekit fonts, doesn't matter. You have choices of fonts to use in your type design now, or your web design. So if you want to use a graphic, that's fine. Muse will make that graphic for you. If you want it to be real type and not one of the standard 11, you got 3 choices to do that. And it's real text that's searchable and SEO friendly, I should say is the best way to put it. All right, so with that said, looks like I am just about out of time in about 28 seconds. So I want to thank you guys. How about we continue this with a part 3 on Tuesday, because we really didn't finish. There's a lot more to go. So this is actually starting to turn into a learning stream. But we'll do a part 3 of this. And sorry about my issue with Lightroom earlier. I'm getting just some weird things with Lightroom. Just give me a spinning wheel every time I'm trying to do something in this particular graphic. But know that the upright guided feature is there now. Click on guided, draw out your guides for however you want to align your graphic, or sorry, your image, and it will align your image accordingly. So that feature just got added yesterday to Camera Raw and Lightroom CC. So with that said, take care. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. We'll see you next Tuesday. And stay tuned for the Overwatch hype with Molten Ink. Take care.